And if anybody has any questions, just chime in. So we've got to go all the way back to October of 2019 when we went to Pitcairn Island. This is actually my second visit to Pitcairn. My first visit was on my way back from Bouncy Island. We had to leave Bouncy a day early because of bad weather. And so we had time on our schedule. So we went by Pitcairn and spent a day on Pitcairn. And I enjoyed it so much. And I thought that Pitcairn was such an unusual place that there was no question in my mind when I was offered the opportunity to join the DXpedition to Pitcairn. I said absolutely yes, and it was I was not disappointed. So the first three slides are about a little bit about the history, and I think rather than trying to tell you what's on these slides, I'm going to give you a couple minutes to just quickly review what's here, and I'll shut up.
Okay. Could you still see the burned wreck?
No, it's all deteriorated.
Okay. There was a National Geographic article many years ago called "Finding the Bones of the Bounty," which was about how much of that wreck remained.
Yeah, and you have to dive it to see it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can't see it from the bluff or from a boat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as a sailor, I was always totally impressed after I found out why sail a 23-foot open lifeboat 4,000 miles. That's just like,
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it is amazing.
That tells you what a good navigator Bly was.
Mm-hmm.
And what a good sailor he was.
yeah, that's an amazing story.
Okay, so if everybody's ready, I'm going to go to slide history number 2. And this talks about the Bounty sailing around the South Pacific, trying to find a place to hide, because they knew the English were pissed, and the English was going to come for them. So they were looking for a place to hide. And fortunately for the Bounty mutineers, the Royal Navy charts were incorrect, or else the Royal Navy would have found them a lot sooner.
Hmm.
So did the, I haven't followed this that close, but how did the bad guys eventually get caught after they marooned Captain Bligh when he went to Pitcairn and then they took off? Did they get eventually punished or whatever?
Oh yeah, they got punished. They killed each other on the island.
Oh, okay.
Before they were found.
Mm-hmm.
And the English finally found them, there was only one man left, and that was John Adams. Okay, I'm going to move on to the last slide about the history. And that shows the boathouse at Bouncy Bay as well. And the immortal words of Rodney King, can't we all get along?
Yeah.
The answer is no. Not on Pitcairn anyway. So now we'll get into a little bit of radio. So here's the Great Circle map. Here's Pitcairn right here. It's almost due south from where we're located. And of course, it's a chip shot to California. So all of you could have worked us on multiple bands and multiple modes, running QRP and a piece of spaghetti for an antenna.
Mhm. If you could get through the JAs.
Well, we managed the pileups pretty well,
Yeah, I know. I'm just,
and the JAs were very, very,
they're polite.
very, very cooperative in standing by, because they knew they were all going to get through eventually anyway. So for me, the adventure began in Los Angeles at LAX, and we flew to Papeete, and the entire team met in Papeete. And from there, we had to travel to Mangareva to meet the Braveheart, which was our ship to get to Pitcairn. And we had most of us planned a day or two to be in Papeete before we had to leave our flight. The flight to Mangareva is once a week. I'll show you what the plane looks like. And it's every Tuesday. It leaves at 7:30 in the morning. Refuels on the way to Mangareva. Then continues on. And once you land in the islands, that group of islands, the plane takes on a new passenger list, and they fly back to Papeete once a week. So if you miss that flight, you're SOL. And here's the all the things that you associate with Tahiti and French Polynesia: diving, pearls, cruise ships, fishing, living out in the water, good food, lots of good food, Polynesian culture, and a few fish. Population of Tahiti, about 180,000. In Papeete, this is the capital city. Tourism is essentially the only way they get any money in there, and farming is black pearls. And I have a few women in my life that told me not to come back unless I came back with some pearl jewelry. So I did that. And
Arnie, I was there on the.
that's why I'm still here.
Arnie, is Tahiti still as expensive as when I was there 30 years ago?
Is the what as expensive?
It's the whole Tahiti as expensive as was. I was there on a sailing trip about 30 years ago.
Well, I don't know what it was like 30 years ago, but travel today is expensive just about wherever you go. I mean, if you want to have creature comforts. So now this is a picture that I took from the flight book, the magazine on Air Tahiti, and it really tickled my fancy, and I hope it tickles yours. If you look at this, it's 2 pages. You can see the crease down the middle, and if you look at all the gray amongst the blue ocean, you can see Ireland here, and here's the UK, and here's France here, and here's Spain down here, here's Italy down here, and here's Eastern Europe, And projected on this map of Europe are the islands that make up French Polynesia.
Mhm.
And look at how spread out these islands are in the South Pacific. And they're grouped. So the Marquesas are up here, and the Australs are down here, and the Gambiers are here, and the Society Islands are here. And so, and of course, the other thing to note is here's Tahiti, here's Papeete, and we're going to be flying all the way over to here, Mangareva. This is all the way at the east end of French Polynesia. So I had no idea how spread out these islands were. Never had an appreciation for it. Here are the Tuamotus here. So when you work French Polynesia, you know that you could be working here or here or here, unless their call in some way identifies where they are.
They're all TMs.
If you've never seen an atoll, here's a nice picture. And here's the central lagoon and the surrounding landmass around the central lagoon, and then the blue Pacific. And I don't know which particular island this was, but it was a great picture from the window of the plane. So here we are. This is our transportation from Papeete to Mangareva. It's a twin engine turboprop, and it seats about 30, 35. And we had to stop, as I said, part way to refuel on the way to Mangareva. And then when we got to Mangareva, here is, here is the bustling terminal. And it's about the size of Alan's house, I think. So it's just one great big building, and there's just nothing there. They do have a little snack stand inside that they open once a week on Tuesdays. So once you get to you actually don't land on the island of Mangareva. You land on another little island that has a runway on it. And then from the runway, you offload, and then you get on this ferry. So everybody that's on the plane gets on this ferry, and they load all the luggage back in the back of the ferry here, and then everybody sits in the front part here. And it costs about $10 to get ferried from the airport to Mangareva. But if you're a senior, it's only $2.
Okay.
And when we get to Mangareva, here's Matt Jolly, who's our captain, waiting for us to greet us as we get off the ferry and load us onto the Braveheart. And here's the Braveheart. And it is up for sale now. The Jolly family is getting out of the business. So if you have a spare $250,000, you may be able to negotiate the price a bit. You can buy the Braveheart. And buying a ship like the Braveheart is like buying your first airplane. That the day that you buy it is the happiest day of your life. The day that you sell it then becomes the happiest day of your life. It costs quite a bit to maintain a ship like this. So here's some of French Polynesia over here, Gambier Islands. And then we've got to go from Mangareva to Pitcairn. And that's about 200 and, I don't know, 50, 260 miles. And the Pitcairn Islands actually are a marine reserve. So that marine reserve consists of Wano Atoll, Henderson Island, Ducie Atoll, and then the island of Pitcairn. So as I told you, when I was at Ducie, we motored to Pitcairn before we went back to Mongareva and spent a day at Pitcairn. And you can see it's basically on the way. And this is the Marine Reserve. Here's our team, our multinational team of 14 operators. You can see, so some of the team will be familiar to you because they've been on lots of other DXpeditions, and some of them might be newbies for you. Here's Pitcairn from the longboat that picked us up. The only way you can get onto Pitcairn is to offload from the ship that you're on onto a longboat, and the longboat takes you in to Bouncy Bay. Here's the where the longboats are housed, right here. And this area right here is Bouncy Bay. Here are the longboats. They have two of them. They travel in tracks, and everything is done manually. They don't have any motors to pull these boats. So they do have winches, but you know, when they pull these boats down into the water, they do it manually. It's crazy. But that's how they do it. This is our host. This is Randy Christian, and we stayed in his house and operated from his house for this expedition. At least part of the expedition operated from his house. Very handy guy. He built a second story onto his house. He built a garage that served as a dormitory for the operators. We had 4 operators that could sleep up here, but the other 10 had to sleep in the garage. I'll show you what that was like. And then this building over here, he also built in preparation for us arriving. And that's where we set up our stations. That became the rec room or party room. And I'll show you that as well. So here's the garage, pretty spacious. And here's a corner of the garage with some cots. It's still, this is still a lot more comfortable than sleeping on a military cot or sleeping in a sleeping bag. This was the 4 guys were able to sleep in the house. This is that second story. And you can see we really don't care too much about making our beds. We actually had flush toilet and a shower. You know, I mean, this was luxury. We even had hot water. So this was really, really, really comfortable digs for us for the time that we were on the island.
Huh. Does the flush toilet go into the ocean, or is there a septic tank, or what?
They have septic tanks.
Septic tanks, okay.
Yeah. And here's Randy's kitchen. You can see a big oven over here. Randy is the pizza maker for the island too. So we had pizzas for some of our dinners, and they weren't too bad. But you know, over here's here's a refrigerator and running water and a stove. So it was really, really very, very convenient. We weren't roughing it too much here. Here's the rec room that he built, and this is before we put all our set all our stations up. And then over here on the, through this entryway is where we took our meals. Here's our fuel dump outside of Randy's house. And power and light for the radios. 3 generators outside of his house. And this is the building where the radios were located. Now, there was a second site that we utilized for this DXpedition, primarily so that we could put a 160-meter antenna up and an 80-meter antenna up, because we were kind of strapped for space at Randy's place. We did have other, 40, 17, 20, and 15-meter beams as well at this place. And this is where the old commercial radio station was housed when Pitcairn had a commercial radio station, and also where the club amateur radio station was housed as well. And you can see there's a tower here, but we couldn't use it because the base was all rusted. The tower was rusted, and we just prayed that the tower didn't come down while we were there. If your eyes are sharp, you'll notice right here that there's a tri-band beam on a very small makeshift tower. This beam was left by a group of Europeans that had been on the island prior to us, and rather than to take the antenna back with them, they just left it there, and it was rotting in place. It was not usable. So to give you an idea, here's Randy's house right here. And as the crow flies, here is the building that I just showed you that housed the commercial and club stations. And you can see there's multiple pathways through the brush here to get from one point to the other. And these are all muddy dirt roads to walk to. But we were very interested in the distance between point A and point B, because we wanted to participate in the CQ Worldwide Sideband Contest. And one of the rules, the CQ rules, is that your stations must be within a 1,500-foot range. And you'll notice that we just made it. 467.55 meters, or about close to 1,500 feet. So we knew we were going to be legal. And there we are, multi-operator, multi-transmitter, #1 for Pitcairn,
Yeah.
and #1 for Oceania, but number 11 in the world. That wasn't too bad. This is the interior of the building where the commercial station was. None of this equipment is usable, and everything is in disrepair. We had to clean this place out. It was a mess, but we did clean it out enough so that we could put our stuff in. And outside of the building was another 3 generators, and this is power and light for the second site. Here's that tri-bander I pointed out to you before. So here we are putting our 160-meter antenna together. This was built for us by DX Engineering. And it is a tour de force to build it, to erect it, and a hell of a lot of fun to operate it. Here we are at Randy's place putting together some monobander. This happens to be, I believe, the 20-meter monobander. Come on. There we go. Sorry about that. Okay, so here's a shot of Randy's house, and you can see we've got antennas all around it. We've got a 40-meter vertical, we had a 30-meter vertical behind that, 10 and 12-meter beams, 15 and 17-meter beams here. We had a 20-meter beam back here. We had a 60-meter
What do they do?
vertical back here.
Little princes and princesses.
Actually got into the meeting,
Oh. Well,
Sorry,
but I just do whatever you want.
is somebody asking a question?
go happy. I'm sure you just got a bunch of.
Okay, Roger, you should mute everybody except me. Anyway, this is kind of the antenna setup at Randy's place. And this is how we got our masts up. We used the falling dark technique. And this is the tower. And this is the fulcrum. And this is the pole that we use. And basically the tower tilts to the right. You load your antenna on it. And then with a rope at this end of the pole, you pull the tower up vertically. And of course, before you do that, you put your guy ropes and on, and then you put your stakes in and you guy your tower. And to just leave this here to prevent the tower from tilting over if any of your guys fail. And we also put a stake here to kind of stabilize the base as well. And this is a very easy way to get short towers up very quickly.
We had one like that on Swains Island.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's very convenient. Okay, so here we are back at the commercial station, and here's our 160-meter antenna lying down. Here's the same idea, except look at the size of this pole that we have to pull on to raise our 160-meter vertical. And this is the 80-meter vertical here. This is a rusty tower. Here's another rusty tower back here. And we had some other towers scattered out in the field here for the other antennas that I mentioned. So here's the base of the 160-meter antenna now that it's up, and that long pole that you saw is now on the ground. Here's the tower. This is the vertical. You can see how it's insulated from ground. Here's the tuning box here, matching box, and you can see all these radials all around. And a little closer look. Again, a plug for DX Engineering, who built this and tested it. And if you go to the DX Engineering website, you can see where Tim and his group from K3LR actually tested this antenna out and to make sure that it worked properly. And it also shows them putting it up in a movie. And we also had some Beverage antennas. Here's a shot of one of the poles. You can see the Beverage wire is not very high off the ground, but they work very, very well. And we could direct it either one way or the other, depending upon which way we set the switch. And here is the 160-meter station, which is kind of typical of all the other stations as well. This is the first Dxpedition, first major Dxpedition that ever used flex radios. Here's the flex right here. Here's the computer screen. Here's the maestro. Here's the keyboard, the key, the Radio Sport headphones, the ACOM amplifier, of course, the bandpass filters that we have to have. And then since this is the 160-meter antenna that is hooked up to the Beverages, this is the Beverage controller right here. And just about every station looked exactly like this, except they didn't have the beverage controller. Now, Lance Collister, those of you who do EME or know about EME, know that Lance Collister is a big 6-meter EME guy. And he sent us this 7-element widespread 6-meter beam that we put up so that we could operate EME. And again, you can see how we put it up, because it's got the falling derrick hardware. And this thing's a monster. I mean, it's easier to manage a tri-bander than this 6-meter beam. But it did play very well. And you can see what kind of shot we had at the moon. There's just no obstruction at all. And this is how we hooked up all our radios to the coax coming in. This is our patch panel. And you can see that we were using high power, 1500 watt bandpass filters on all the bands. And you can question why they call our hobby wireless, because it's far from being wireless. But here we are. This is the stations at Randy's place. And we had 4 stations here, 3 operators at this time. And there's our Northern California Foundation banner, CDXC banner. And we put up various banners throughout the operation. We also interconnected the 2 operating sites, so that we used N1MM, and we were able to see what was going on at the other operating site. And that worked well for about 2 days. And then we had a tremendous rainstorm. We almost lost our 20-meter beam at Randy's house. And we totally lost the Wi-Fi. The question was, were we going to waste our time trying to get it set up again, or were we going to do without it? We decided to do without it. We really didn't need it. It would be nice to have, but we could get by without it. So we never fixed that. But we did see a pretty rainbow after the storm. Now, you can't talk about Pitcairn Island without talking about Tom Christian. And here's Tom Christian when he came through Southern California in the early 90s and visited some of the clubs in the south of California before he went up north to visit you guys. And he came with his family. He had 3 daughters and he had a wife, and they toured California, and then they went to points east as well. So he had a very nice vacation here in the States. He died 2013, and this is his gravesite on the island. And they honored him with his crawl on his headstone as well. Now here's Merelda. Here's VP6YL, the only YL on Pitcairn, and quite honestly, probably the only active operator on Pitcairn now. And everybody who knows anything about Pitcairn and amateur radio has probably heard about Merelda at one time or another. She's a lovely, lovely woman. She opened her house to us. We visited her. It was fun in interfacing with her, and she's quite the entrepreneur. I'll tell you a little bit about that later. Here's Greg, W6IZT. He's got a 6 call, even though he lives in Georgia now, because he grew up in San Bruno. up in your neck of the woods. So, and he kept us calm. Anyway, here's Meralda's little Yaesu radio, but she and she had a computer, and the computer was interfaced with the radio, but she had never operated FT8, and you know, she needed an upgrade digitally, and so Greg helped her out quite a bit. And here he is getting her set up for FT8. Her vertical antenna, multi-band vertical antenna, was a piece of rusty aluminum, and it was not usable. So she had been off the air. So at the end of our expedition, we gave her this 40-meter vertical, which you can also use on 15 meters, and she uses it on 17 with an antenna tuner. And you can see all the radials here at the base. And we set her up, and I know she's been on the air, and I know that she's been having fun on amateur radio again. The usual frequency on 17 meters that she operates is 18.147. 18.147. Good time to listen for her, a good place to listen for her. And the good time is 7:30 in the morning, our time, to maybe 9. She does get on in the morning if she gets on. Now, I don't think Beverly is here, so I had invited her to join us. I know Alan knew K3LP.
Yep.
Who, in fact, I guess your last trip with Dave Collingham was to Bonaba, I guess. Is that right, Alan?
No, maybe Swains Island.
Okay, maybe Swain. Okay.
I have to look through all my
No,
stuff.
it doesn't matter.
I was on
I know
Bonavista.
you've traveled. I know
And he-
you've traveled. with him.
And he's very good with kids.
Yes. Well,
Or
Dave,
was.
Dave grew up in Fontana.
Okay.
And-
Arizona State or something.
Right. Dave grew up in Fontana. He got his amateur radio license in Fontana. And he introduced me to his mentor when that gentleman was still alive. Dave and kept in touch with his mentor all those years. Unfortunately, Dave is a silent K. But Dave recruited me to help him to some extent with a relationship that he had developed with a school teacher by the name Beverly Matheson, WA6BK, and her elementary school classes. And Dave would come to Southern California on business trips 3 or 4 times a year. We'd get together. We'd go to the school. Dave would regale the class with all kinds of things, amateur radio, and he helped set up a wonderful amateur radio station in there for these elementary school kids. He helped teach them to get their entry licenses. Dave and I and Paul, N6HC, Paul flew down from Northern California, and the 3 of us administered tests to the kids. We licensed a bunch of kids. This is not just 1 year. This went on over years, probably now at least 10 years. So the classes change. The kids maintain contact with the amateur radio club, even though they move on to junior high school and high school now. One of the things that Dave instituted was having the kids make a flag, and everybody in the class would sign the flag. You can see these signatures here. And they have their own call sign for their station, K6DGE, Dorothy Grant Elementary. And And I still go out there. Of course, I haven't been out there in a year and a half, although I did hear from Beverly yesterday that they're opening up the schools. So I guess sometime this fall, I'll be going out there again. And so here I am with the class, and this is these are two of my compatriots, W6SQE and KM6EMP, who also came out. And we usually give the kids, I try to do the same kind of job that Dave did, but I can't do it as well as he did. As Alan told you, Dave had a way with kids, and they just loved him. He was a big teddy bear. And that's not to say they don't like me, but there's no way you can replace the big teddy bear. Anyway, here are the kids with the flag, and I took this flag with me to Pitcairn. Here's their station at the school. They got an ICOM 7300 now, an old Alpha amp, rotator. They've got a 50-foot beam. They got I think it's a C3 on the tower. Kids mostly operate 20-meter sideband, so that's all they need. You can see they're learning geography. Ham radio is prominent in the teaching curriculum in Beverly's class. She teaches these kids algebra, geography, things that they would not get in other elementary school classes. And the kids all love being in Bev's class. So here we are on Pitcairn. You'll recognize the blue color of Randy's house here. And here's our team, and I'm holding the flag, and everybody on the team signed the flag, and I brought this flag back and gave it back to the kids and gave them a little Pitcairn presentation as well. And they, the new class, I guess, doesn't know anything about Dxpeditions yet, because it's been a while since there's been any Dxpedition that's gone out, but they will learn. Here's part of the enclave in Adamstown. There's only one place to live on the island, and that's Adamstown. And you can see they've got these water catchment barrels, and this is what their housing looks like. Very, very South Pacific-like. See the lava rocks in the yards. This was recovered from the HMS Bounty. It's one of the cannons. Here is the anchor, the Bounty that they've recovered. And then down here, another little cannon. They have one church on the island, Seventh-day Adventist Church. I was impressed that none of the people on the island seem to be religious, or do they want to have anything to do with organized religion. But they do have a pastor who is on contract from New Zealand. They have 5 contract people from New Zealand who live on the island. One of them is a religious leader. Here's the interior of church. This is the town square, and they happen to be setting up for a goodbye potluck dinner for us. We were getting ready to leave, so they were throwing us a party. They have a museum. This museum is right across the dirt road from Meralda's place. Interesting museum. And here is John Adams' grave with his two wives, I believe. He was the last surviving mutineer. He outlived all the others. They all killed each other, usually over women. I was very glad to see this the first time I went to Pitcairn, so I knew that I didn't have to bring too much in the way of medical kit with me on this trip, because they have their own healthcare center and it was fairly well staffed. And they have a doctor, again, a contract individual who signs up for a minimum of a year. And so there was a doctor here. And this is the third contract person. They have a police officer, that New Zealand police officer that comes and stays on island. The fourth contract person is an immigration officer. And the fifth contract person escapes my feeble mind right now, but I'll think of it later. Here's the shot of part of the cemetery. Here's Tom Christian's grave right here. I told you that Meralda is a very industrious woman. These are her beehives. And if you go online and you want to get some Pitcairn honey, just Google Pitcairn honey and you'll be able to order some honey from Meralda. She also planted some coffee plants shortly before we arrived there, and she sells Pitcairn Island coffee. This is probably one of the prettiest spots on the island. It's called St. Paul's Pool. And here's the Pacific Ocean, and this pool is protected by these lava rock projections. The pool is crystal clear, and it's just beautiful. Okay, here's Bounty, the entrance to Bouncy Bay. This is where the longboats come in. And here's the Bouncy Bay here, and longboat house here. And this is how the boats come in to the island. You can see there are no other areas to land on this island. The rest of the island looks like this. There's no landing spot here. There's no beaches. So that's why you have to come in on a longboat. We saw some pretty skies while we were there. Thought this was kind of pretty. This is looking up towards the commercial radio station. You can see the 160-meter antenna, a couple other towers here. They do get weather. They get lots of rain. They also get cruise ships. What? Cruise ships in Pitcairn? You bet. Cruise ships usually start in Tahiti, and they cruise across the Pacific all the way to Easter Island and then off to Chile. And they have stops along the way. They actually stop at Ducie if the weather's okay. And a lot of the people that are on these cruise ships are birders. And they see birds on this ship route that they can't see anywhere else in the world. So yeah, they get cruise ships. The last I heard, I think they had like 25 cruise ships that came by before the pandemic started. That's pretty active. Now, if the weather's bad, they can't offload because the only way to get on the island is on a longboat. So they have to get off of their cruise ship, get on a longboat, and then come in. And if the weather is bad, if the seas are rough, they won't go in. So it's a long way to go to see Pitcairn from the ocean. So you got to hope for good weather. And we saw lots of whales too off of the coast of the island too. This is a great shot. I love the plume of water from the blowhole of this whale. And if you kind of blow up this picture, you can actually see this is a mama whale, and there's a little calf with her as well. Pitcairn is one of those places in the world where the skies are crystal clear. And if you don't have cloud cover, you can get some fantastic pictures and see some fantastic nights. This is a galaxy that you'll probably never see from California. Galaxy it is, but look at this night sky. Unbelievable. Another shot. It reminds me of I can't remember his name now, the astronomer who Neil Tyson replaced. Billions,
Sagan,
billions.
Sagan,
Huh?
Take it.
Yeah,
Carl
yeah.
Sagan.
Carl Sagan. Billions and billions and billions of stars. Well, there they are. There are billions of them. And here's a shot of Adamstown at night from Randy's place. And fairy terns and frigate birds, lots of wildlife. Here's some crabs, here's some masked boobies. And so here are some of the statistics. And I'll just let you look at the statistics. We made over 82,000 contacts. You can see we made a lot of FT8 contacts, a little less than a third of our contacts. These stations probably would never have gotten into our log otherwise. So those of you who are not FT8 enthusiasts, that's okay, but let's live and let live. And people who want to chase DX and only have 100 watts and a piece of spaghetti for an antenna, they can play ham radio too. And almost 25,000 of them played ham radio, making contact with us on FT8. Again, another breakdown. This is by continent. You can see that the bulk of our contacts were with North America. But the JAs and the Europeans were kind of neck and neck. I think that the Europeans were very happy with our operation. They knew that we did make an effort to work them. Okay, and another way of looking at the breakdown by continents, the blue is North America, obviously, and Europe, Asia, and then the rest of the world. And then a breakdown by bands, by mode. Okay, so here's the team photo, and we had 5 countries represented. Here's Tajikistan, this is no deer, US, there's a hawk from Sweden, Japan, and Spain. Our QSL card, it's a fold-out QSL card. I hope if you picked us, you requested a QSL card. It's pretty, and a list, of course, of the operators. There are lots of other stories I could tell you about this expedition, but the time is limited. Thanks for your attention, and I'll entertain any questions you might have.
Thanks for 160.
You're welcome.
Yeah, 160 and 12. I just looked while you were talking. 160 and 12 were both new band countries from your expedition. So,
Hey, Doug.
Hey,
How you
hey,
doing?
Arnie, I made it. Good.
Good.
How are you doing? Hey, I had a question on the flex. That was 100% flex, as I recall. So how did that work out?
Well, we had a couple experts on Flex. Craig.
Oh yeah,
Compton,
yeah, okay.
K9.
He has a whole station. Yeah.
Yeah, he checked all the stations out, and his contest station is now all Flex radios.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when he had all K3s, and
Yeah.
before that he had all ICOMs. He's a Flex guy now. And Glenn Johnson is a Flex operator. He
Oh,
has Flex radios. And there were a couple other guys who had Flexes at home as well. So we had people that actually knew what they were doing, and they schooled dummies like me on how to operate a Flex radio.
well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
You had Maestros too. Did you like those?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, we use them exclusively.
Yeah. That's the conventional radio
Yeah.
feel. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
You probably missed I had a picture that showed the setup of one of our typical stations, and you could see.
Oh, I got in. I got mixed up on the meeting ID and all that, and I finally tried it. I saw Roger's email. And I got on here. So yeah, I saw that. That was the separating of the stations. That probably helped a lot too.
Right. It did.
Yeah. Well, good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
Hopefully, we have Visalia in play next year.
Yeah.
Looks like we are.
Are you
I
gonna go?
think. I love going to those.
Yeah, I
Just the
heard
camaraderie and
I heard the Northern California guys were thinking about boycotting it because it was going to be back at the Wyndham, which is
Oh.
a Holiday Inn.
to me, it's just another QTH.
Yeah. It's just a weekend, right?
Yeah, that's right. And it's been 2 years. So but at that point, so more than that. Yeah. 3 years. The last convention was in 19. So
Right. So any other questions?
What kind of whales?
Fred? Go ahead,
I
Fred.
wanted to ask, what's the current population there, even, I guess counting 5 contract guys, how many people live in it?
The population varies. When we were there were about 50. The first time I went on the way back from Ducey, there were only 30 people on island at that time. The islanders travel back and forth to French Polynesia and New Zealand. Actually, when we were there, Steve Christian, we met Steve Christian in the airport because he was on his way back to Papa Ede for some medical treatment. And when we left the island, we ran into him in the airport again on his way back home and our way out. So anyway, the population does vary. The fifth contract person that I couldn't think of was a school teacher. So they have a school teacher from New Zealand, and they teach first grade through 7th or 8th grade, something like that. And once the kids become get to 8th or 9th grade, they have to go off island and they go back to New Zealand for high school. So when we were there were two girls. One was 13 and one was 9, I think. They were sisters. And then there was one couple who was visiting, and they had two young boys, one about 12 and one about 8. And these two people from Sweden with their two boys were checking Pitcairn out to possibly move there from Sweden.
Hmm.
And of course, the Pitcairn Islanders were checking them out too, to make sure that they would fit in with the population there. I don't know whatever happened to them, but I definitely would have recommended, and I think Alan would agree, that they needed a psychiatric evaluation.
Yeah, really. Hey, what kind of whales were those, or do you know?
I don't know. Probably humpbacks.
Probably humpbacks. Okay, and where are you going next, or are you going anywhere next?
How old are you, Alan?
Yeah, well, I stopped DXpeditioning at 77.
Yeah. And there may be one more trip in me, but who knows? It all depends on when that might be.
Mhm.
And, you know, I mean, there's, you know, nobody's gone out on Dxpeditions except Dom. And
Mhm.
if you can believe him. And, you know, I mean, if the next Dxpedition is 3 or 4 years from now, because, you know, these Dxpeditions take time to prepare too. A year, sometimes 2. I'm going to be an octogenarian.
Mhm.
I don't know how smart it would be for me to go to some uninhabited or sparsely inhabited island as an octogenarian, especially if I'm the only doctor. Doctors don't take care of themselves if they're smart. So I can't answer that question for you at this point. But it may be, I may be like you. I may have hung up my my paddle and my earphones and
My next expedition.
operate from home.
My next expedition maybe will be CQP,
Uh-huh.
maybe to a sparsely populated California county.
Glenn County or something.
Yeah, good for you.
Something not too far off the interstate.
And away from the fires. Yeah.
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 Arnie, that was a great presentation. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much for making the time for us.
No problem. Let me just mention one other thing. I'm disappointed that Bev couldn't make the Zoom meeting here, but it was short notice. One of the things that I asked for was permission to contact the school from Pitcairn. So I got permission from the co-leaders to co-op the 20-meter sideband station in the morning. And there's only an hour difference between Pitcairn and California. And on 4 separate occasions in the morning, we were able to contact the school for about an hour. And we just told everybody who wanted to contact us, you know, give us a break. We're talking with the school and we need a clear frequency. And people were really very good about it. And every kid got a chance to ask 1 or 2 questions about what we were doing or what life was like on Pitcairn. And so they really had a feeling of connection with our Dxpedition, and I got to see how amateur radio can be a lot of fun. And we got a lot of positive feedback from that for taking the time to do that. Anything else?
Did you operate any FT8 while you were there?
Oh yeah, I did a lot of FT8
Okay,
operations.
so what's it like as the Fox? Presumably you were the Fox when you were on.
Yeah, I was the Fox.
Yeah.
It's the second time that I'd operate FT8 on a Dxpedition. The first Dxpedition that ever operated FT, actually third time, excuse me. The first Dxpedition was Baker Island.
Mhm.
And that's when they were developing the Dxpedition mode. So I got to use that along with John, K6MM, did a lot of FT8 operation with that as well. Second expedition was Ducey, and the third one was Pitcairn.
Mhm.
You know, it was very easy. You can work as many as 5 stations at a time.
Mhm.
So you can really rack up a lot of contacts. And that's important when an opening to a particular part of the world is very limited. If those guys are smart, they'll get on FT8 and we'll be looking for them, because we know, just like they know, which ones, which parts of the world are tough and have very, very limited propagation. So, and we did get feedback too, because we did have satellite communication, both email and voice. So we got feedback. A lot of people told us when there was an opening to their part of the world and how long that opening was. So we really did make an effort to get to those difficult parts of the world to give those guys contacts. Of course, you know that when you're a Fox, and we were running 900,000 watts, okay?
Mhm.
So that's if you're working one station. But if you're working two stations at the same time, now your power is split. So now it's 500 on one channel and 500 on the other. You're working three channels. Now your power is 333 watts on each channel, and you can do the rest of the math.
Yeah.
So we had to be careful not to run too many channels at the same time if we had a poor signal into that particular part of the world. So that did limit us some with some of the operation. But it was easy to operate. And on Ducey, I ran 3 stations at once
Mhm.
on 3 separate bands doing FT8.
Yeah, because I read all. Yeah, I think that was the first time I worked at Dxpedition with FT8, and I read all the instructions on how to be a proper hound. But that really wasn't necessary. I just parked my signal about 1,500 up from where you were and called.
Yeah.
And it came back as a part of the string of, four other.
And when I was running 3 stations at once, I felt like a one-armed paper hanger, because you got to keep your eye on 3 different screens, see what's happening. You got to check on which stations you're going to call next. You got to see who came through, who copied you, and to make sure it was a complete contact. So it was challenging, but it was fun.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Wonderful, Arnie. Good to see you again. And I'm going to go finish my dinner and
Okay.
and hope to see you in person soon.
Well, next time I'm up visiting my sister-in-laws, if I do that, I will definitely give you a call, and we'll drop down from Santa Rosa and have an eyeball.
Yeah,
So,
for sure. Yeah.
so
I
Excellent.
applaud your efforts with that school. I was, when you said a couple years and then it's gone on for nearly a decade now, that is wonderful. You were correct. We were planting the seed for the next generation, at least new engineers and so on. So
we're trying,
Yeah.
A couple of the kids got their general class licenses, and I went to one kid's house with Chip Margelli, K7JA, and we set up a station for that child. All donated equipment, a transceiver, antenna. Was Dave Collingham was very, very generous with his money, and he bought a lot of stuff, but we got a lot of stuff donated as well. So Chip and I set up one station, and I forget who helped me with it. I think Tim Geppinger, N6GP, and I set up another station for another kid. So we're trying, but it's a hard sell.
Oh yeah.
And it's not a hard sell for the kids who are interested. It's a hard sell to get past the parents. What? You want to put an antenna up where? What? You want to run a wire where?
Yeah,
That's the hard sell.
yeah.
So we do our best.
That's all we can do.
Well, thanks again, Arnie. That was.
Yeah,
really-
thanks again, Arnie. It
Thank
round of
you.
applause for you there.
Thank you. And, if you guys want me to come back again, I'll be happy to give you a little talk about some of my experience, my medical experiences on 14 major DXpeditions. And
That'd be an interesting talk.
yeah,
Probably.
I'm giving it at W9 DXCC in
Oh,
September. And
okay.
I've given it to some of the clubs locally here in the past. But I'm sure Alan would get a kick out of it too. And Alan would be able to add a lot to it as well, because he's had a lot of experience on Dxpeditions and having to do doctor work as well.
Mhm.
So anyway, thank you for your attention. I hope you were entertained and maybe even learned something. And everybody be well and be safe. And until next time, 73.
73.
73. Thanks.